Okay, Askadaskval said, yep, Feynman's awesome. Too bad he doesn't like philosophers. And I said, prove it. And he came up with the goods, and he gave 4 quotes of Feynman trashing philosophy. And I was thinking about the stories and his comments, and I already thought of Feynman as someone who didn't have a lot of respect for a lot of particular philosophy and soft sciences. He wants people to be empirical, but he didn't necessarily hate like a science. I mean, this is my impression of him, like psychology in itself. It's just the way that people were performing it, because he thought you could perform um, uh, inquiry like that in a scientific way, which I agree with, because it's the skeptical way. You can have to have evidence and leave the door to the unknown open and all of this stuff. Just don't be dogmatic. I see that in his message. He's a skeptic. But in looking into this, and some of these, I had, philosophy is bullshit. I'm still looking up that for the context. I might have to pay for that paper, but um, in terms of the quotes that are about how the philosophers have done some unuseful things and make some unuseful points, that I already expected. But it does look like also, he was more overtly negative in general. But he does philosophy. He says philosophy of science. He talks on economics and when he talks about reductionism, that in itself, talking about it, that the flower is still beautiful because the processes in it are beautiful, and that's aesthetics and philosophy, and I think of part of a philosophy of science. So it is interesting, but I have to give him a point. Yeah, no, I think, I'm sure if he had a friend that was a philosopher, or he was a philosopher, so would he have liked himself? But those are all sort of just weak little side points. Apologia. So I'm not trying to apologize for him. I don't think he's necessarily perfect, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I've spent a lot of time saying in the past how much bullshit philosophy is in the West. And so yeah, I think it's pretty true to say he doesn't like philosophers. Oh, and by the way, it was Askadaskval that came up with the quotes. It was C.P. Lanes that made the original comment. But interesting. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I never really did know how overt, but I'm not surprised it is in such bold terms. But I hadn't seen just the one where philosophy is bullshit. I've heard him critiquing, but it's always like includes the way you should do it. It's like like he is a philosopher of science, but yeah. And laughing at philosophers, okay, that's a little more to the edge, but just philosophy is bullshit. So I don't know, though, because I haven't seen that in context, but I was thinking about it, and I guess, yeah, I would concede he didn't like philosophers.